Back in the early 90s, arcades were poppin'. If you're like 40 right now, you've probably had your adventures with your local arcade. What does this have to do with arcades, you might be asking? Good question. In 1992, a game by the name of Mortal Kombat hit arcades and revolutionized fighting games with its digitized actors, hidden secrets, and most importantly, fatalities. Fatalities were the reason why Mortal Kombat stood out against other fighting games like Street Fighter 2 at the time. However, at the cost of being a bloody standout, it was pretty controversial with Congress as they're concerned about the future generations being more violent because of Mortal Kombat and also Night Trap. With home ports being released in 1993, Mortal Kombat 1 home ports had to be censored, meaning that yes, the fatalities were modified to be less violent. However, Genesis was a bit rebellious and included blood code. And in 1994, the ESRB was born. Hopefully you enjoyed that short history lesson. Now let's go over anything else I have to say before I start this ranking video. First of all, I won't include the censored fatalities. Arcade fatalities only. Secondly, since this game only has one stage fatality, I'll rank its one stage fatality with the stage fatalities in Mortal Kombat 2. And thirdly, I'm referring to the 1992 Mortal Kombat as Mortal Kombat 1. But 2023 Mortal Kombat 1 is Mortal 1 Kombat. Okay, let's finish them off and get those fatalities ranked. Number 7. To nobody's surprise, Liu Kang's fatality in Mortal Kombat 1 is the worst finisher of the 7 in this game. He does a fancy spin and then uppercuts you. It's not really that fatal and rather looks more like a special move. In addition, the screen doesn't even darken unlike the other fatalities in this game. The best use you're going to get out of this fatality is in the pit stage since Liu Kang uppercuts the opponent into the spikes. But I'd be willing to give a C tier for a few reasons. Reason number 1, Liu Kang was originally intended to not be a murderous bastard, but that was immediately dropped when the sequel came around. Reason number 2, it has unique sprites exclusively for this fatality. And reason number 3, there's only 7 fatalities. But devs at Midway really didn't want to go all out on making something new since they wanted to test if Mortal Kombat would be a success to warrant a sequel. So in general, what would I get out by trashing on a finishing move from 33 years ago when tensions for blood and gore in video games back then weren't that high? Thankfully, that was our only C tier fatality in this game, and now we're on to the B tiers. Fatalities that would reasonably kill me. So let's go see what these finishers have in store. Number 6. Kano's fatality is better than Liu Kang's as it looks like a fatality that can actually kill you in real life. What he does is that he reaches into your chest to grab your heart and then shows it off while looking at it too. For 1992 standards, this is a really good looking fatality. But only time would tell as Kano would get some of the lamest fatalities in the post-Armageddon era of Mortal Kombat. While it is good, sadly it does have its drawback of being generic as anyone else could do it. Someone along the lines of Scorpion could also do it with ease. Kano would later have his fatality get stolen by Jarek in Mortal Kombat 4 and then Cobra in Mortal Kombat Deception. So it's not all that original in my opinion when other characters are stealing your trademark fatality. But for 1992 standards, it's fine. Number 5. Sonya's fatality was going to be ranked lower than Kano's, but I thought about it for more than 5 minutes and I realized that Sonya just barely gets the edge over her rival. So how does she brutally murder her opponent? She blows a kiss which has a fireball and it burns the opponent, turning them into a skeleton. I also have to point out how the skeleton looks like a battle droid from Star Wars. I just have to. Compared to a heart rip, it's somewhat creative. Killing someone with a kiss wasn't really much of a thing back then, so it is unique. But it makes me curious if Sonya can just create fire on her own. Hell, if she was going on camping trips, did she use the kiss of death to light up campfires? Who really knows? Who really knows? But let's move on to the A tiers before I make an entirely lengthy discussion about Sonya's fire-breathing abilities. Number 4! And the middle of the road for Mortal Kombat 1 fatalities go to Johnny Cage. For his fatality, he uppercuts his opponent's head off. That's it. Yeah, his head comes off, but that's it. Yes, there is actually. If you're fast enough, you can uppercut your opponent's head off twice. This was so well known that it would be featured in later Mortal Kombat games, and even some characters would later steal his fatality. It ranks above Sonya's fatality because it's a gory one at that. However, due to the fact that everyone keeps stealing poor Johnny's fatality, I cannot put it any higher. That and the fact that it's another generic fatality move anyone can do. With that said, let's see what the top 3 have in mind for brutally murdering your opponent in 1992. Number 3. If I'm being honest, Raiden, or Raiden if you're playing the home ports of the Mortal Kombat games, looks a bit short. I don't know why. Compare it with Mortal Kombat 2 where he looks roughly the same height as every other fighter. I don't know, I just thought that was really odd. Anyways, Raiden's fatality is that he electrocutes his opponent's head and it explodes. The head comes clean off rather than the opponent just lying on the ground or turning into a skeleton, so there's that. I will give it points for its decapitation and the guy performing the finisher making use of his abilities. Hence why it's ranked above Sonya Blade's fatality. If there is one flaw I can say, is that the SNES version of this fatality is sort of better since he electrocutes his opponent into dust with the skeleton head being spared. It was a pretty creative workaround for Raiden's fatality to not include any blood and gore for the SNES version. Good on you, Acclaim Entertainment! I would also like to spread the good news that we are now in the S tier, and I think you guys already know what my top 2 fatalities from this game are going to be. So let's stop the suspense and see what our runner-up is. Number 2! Now I could go either way. I could either put this fatality that I've ranked here at the number 1 spot, or the fatality that I actually put at the number 1 spot. But I ultimately decided on the latter, as Sub-Zero's Spine Rip is the runner-up of being the best fatality from this game. I'm pretty sure you already know how this fatality plays off. Sub-Zero just effortlessly rips out the opponent's head with the spine dangling from the head while the body drops to the ground. It may not be all too special nowadays, but back in the early 90s, it was absolutely gruesome. This fatality, along with the other gory finishers, were so well known that led to the creation of the ESRB. So you can thank the ESRB for letting Donkey Kong Jungle Beat on the GameCube make history by being the first rated E10 Plus game. The only flaw of this fatality is a flaw that I also have with Johnny Cage's fatality and how it looks like a fatality anyone in the series could do. The SNES version did Sub-Zero justice with his ice abilities by implementing them into his quote-unquote finishing bonus, as this version calls it. Good on you, Nintendo. However, there's still one more fatality from this game that we need to talk about. Number 1! People may consider Sub-Zero's fatality from this game as the number 1 fatality, but in my eyes, the best fatality in this game has to go to Scorpion's Toasty fatality. Scorpion takes off his mask and then breathes fire at the opponent, turning them into a clean skeleton. Given how simple these fatalities were, the skull of Scorpion opened up a ton of mysteries on how he was given that skull head. The fatality is also fitting on how he is an undead ninja, and the skull perfectly represents how he isn't your ordinary living person. Can you spit out fire and burn your friend into leathery burnt bacon? I don't think so. Nintendo also did this fatality justice by putting it into the SNES version of this game despite how heavily censored it was. And hell, the fatality would later appear in future Mortal Kombat games with more ways the opponent can feel the power of Toasty. And speaking of future Mortal Kombat games, let's segue into Mortal Kombat 2. After the great success of the first Mortal Kombat, it will only be a matter of time before they drop the sequel. And what a sequel it was! More characters, more stages, more moves, and more fatalities. And in addition to the more fatalities feature, they also added friendships and babalities as a middle finger to all of the controversy surrounding the first game. But before we actually dive into the fatalities each character has, we should also rank the stage fatalities from the first 2 games. The first game only had 1 stage fatality, so I'm merging it with the 3 stage fatalities in the second game. At the bottom, we have the Combat Tomb stage fatality from Mortal Kombat 2. It's just a stage fatality we see later on in this brief list, but flipped upside down. It's really short and that's it. First place goes to the Pit 2. A bit better than the Combat Tomb, but I do not understand why the bottom of the Pit 2 is so empty. Second place goes to the original Pit. It's a simple uppercut into the bottom of the pit with some spikes down below. Simple, but at the same time iconic. And first place goes to the Deadpool, as you uppercut your opponent into some acid rather than some spikes or playing ground. I also like the skeleton sprite after you uppercut your opponent into the acid. Okay, I think we're done talking about the stage fatalities. Let's finally rank the character-specific fatalities, as there's a whopping 26 fatalities to rank. Almost 4 times the amount of the first game. Let's not waste any more time and rank the fatalities in Mortal Kombat 2. Number 26. What's worse than a lame fatality where nothing happens? How about a fatality where you don't see the winner performing the fatality because the person performing the fatality is invisible? I could see either fatality from Melina being the worst, but at the very least they made unique sprites for both those fatalities. This, on the other hand, is just fine at the venturing to levels of laziness. Having to go invisible just to rip the opponent's torso off screams last minute edition energies because they were scrambling to think of an interesting second fatality for Reptile. So the solution was to copy off an already existing fatality we'll see later in his ranking and then slap the gimmick of being invisible to it. So in my opinion, Reptile's invisible fatality is the worst fatality in Mortal Kombat 2. Also, if we're going to do our last place ranking thing, here's where I'd rank Liu Kang's fatality in the first Mortal Kombat game, the Combat Tomb stage fatality, and Reptile's invisible fatality in Mortal Kombat 2. It'll only be a matter of time before Endor from the 2004 Battlefront game gets dethroned as the worst thing I've ranked last place. Number 25. Melina finishes her opponent by stabbing her opponent with her side so that she can summon the Slender Man. Yep, that's it. That's how he finishes her opponent. Slender Man doesn't even show up. What a ripoff! But it is marginally better than Reptile's invisible fatality because you at least see her finishing her opponent, so there was some effort put into it. To me, I feel like it's more worthy of being a special move. Yeah, that's all I can say about this fatality. It sucks, but at least there was some effort put into it. Number 24. Of all the decapitation fatalities, I think this one has to be the weakest in this game. She just decapitates her opponent with her fan, and that's about it. I was thinking about ranking this above the 3 other fatalities which are in C tier, but with how uninteresting that is, I ultimately decided to rank it as the 3rd worst fatality in this game. The only thing I can really say about this fatality is that I wish that Katana got a more interesting fatality than just a head decapitation. Like she can use her fans to slice the arms off her opponent or something. I don't know what else to say other than the fact that we're headed on to C tier. Let's see what the C tier fatalities have in store for us. Number 23 and number 22. Continuing the streak of kiss fatalities, we have the kiss fatalities from both Melina and Katana both lumped together. I didn't feel like talking about them separately, they're roughly the same thing with different effects. Melina's Kiss of Death has her suck up the opponent and barf out the bones of said opponent, while Katana's make the opponent inflate like a balloon and then blow up. In terms of which one I like better, I think Katana wins in that department because her opponent explodes and explosions are epic. Yeah, I have nothing else to bring to the table aside from the fact that this is not the last time we'll see a fatality involving kisses. Number 21. Before I started making the ranking for the Mortal Kombat 2 fatalities, I wasn't sure of where to rank this fatality. I could put it midway through the list or near the bottom. In the end, I decided to put Shang Tsung's inner ear explosion pretty low for this ranking video. It's reminiscent of Ant-Man going inside the ass of Thanos and blowing him up. The only difference is that Shang Tsung goes into the ear of his opponent rather than their ass. At least Shang Tsung makes the opponent explode. Not sure how, but he does it and it's kind of funny. It would be ranked higher if Shang Tsung went into the opponent's ass rather than just the ear. Okay, let's move on already. Number 20. Hey look, it's the worst fatality from the first game brought back into the second game. I actually don't mind this fatality coming back into the sequel. Despite being the worst fatality in the very first game, it's still a solid one. The only real difference here is that they added blood for the people that were pissed off about Liu Kang's fatality from the first game lacking any blood. It's above 6 other fatalities since they have less value and 2 of them are complete garbage. The only thing of note is that there are 19 more fatalities that I like better than this one. Number 19. Since the Spine Rip is off the menu for the time being, guess we'll have to make use of his ice abilities, and one of them is using a snowball to blow up his opponent's upper body. While I do like that Sub-Zero is using his abilities, and the fact that the upper body of his opponent explodes, I'm not sure why Sub-Zero has snowballs that blow up people. Feels kind of off. Thankfully in the next game, Sub-Zero will make use of his ice abilities for both fatalities, and both are quite good. I won't show footage of that just yet, but these 2 fatalities will be ranked either midway through or pretty high up. And also good news, we're out of the C tiers and we can talk about the B tiers. Fatalities that are quite good for 1993 standards. Let's see how these dudes finish off their opponents in the B tier. Number 18, number 17, and number 16. I want to save some time, so I'm going to talk about the 3 decapitation fatalities for this spot. We'll go over Baraka's miniature guillotine fatality first, then Kunga's DIY, and then finally tackle Jax's head crusher fatality. Starting with Baraka, he slices the opponent's head off and that's it. Good use of his blades, but I kinda wish he did more than just decapitating his opponent's head off. With that said, it ranks above Sub-Zero snowball fatality because he's using something that he uses while fighting. Sub-Zero just pulls a snowball out of his ass. Kung Lao's decapitation fatality uses his hat. However, you have to control the hat once the fatality is in motion. While a unique idea, it does feel kind of cheap for first timers. But I do admire it being full range instead of it being up and close to the opponent. God, I hope he doesn't botch his hat throw fatality in the future entry. Jax, on the other hand, does something unique in terms of decapitating his opponent. Rather than just slicing an opponent's head off and calling it a day, he smashes his opponent's head clean off of his hands, leaving no remains of the head. In my opinion, of those 3 that I listed, Jax has the best one since it's a unique twist on the decapitation fatality formula. It also includes some funny frames of Jax so that you can make it look like he's clapping after seeing the most epicest movie of all time. Number 15 and number 14. For this one, I'm going to lump in both of Raiden's fatalities here mainly because both fatalities have the same result. But in terms of which one I like more, I like the one where Raiden tickles you more than the one where he just uppercuts you.
The uppercut leading into an explosion is kinda uneventful in my eyes, but it is funny because explosions are funny. As for the electric tickle fatality, there's more suspense to it and the fact that there's a cool sound to accompany it. Other than that, there is not much to go over for the 2 rating fatalities here, aside from this Reddit post where I mentioned all the returning characters' fatalities from the previous entry with the exception of Sub-Zero's binder have made a return in this game. You mean to tell me electrocuting someone's head off and making someone explode are the same fatality? What kind of nonsense is this?
Number 13. It is with great pleasure to inform you viewers that we have now made it to the top half of this ranking. Now this fatality is similar to Reptile's and Visual Slice fatality, except you actually see Johnny Cage rip out the top half of the opponent's body. That alone makes it like 20 times better than Reptile's and Visual Slice fatality. I had originally placed it at 11th place, but I think the placement I gave it is fine as is. Now let's take a look at our next fatality since I ran out of things to say for this fatality. Number 12.
For our next fatality, you're required to freeze your opponent. That alone gives you as much time as you need, which is really nice to have given how strict the fatality timer is in the early Mortal Kombat games. So even if you do mess up the fatality input, you can freeze your opponent again to reset the fatality timer. With that said, how does the fatality play out? Sub-Zero uppercuts the opponent, completely shattering the upper half of the opponent's body. In a way, it's like Sub-Zero's fatality in the SNES version of Mortal Kombat 1, just a lot more gruesome. So overall, not a bad fatality for Sub-Zero. But there's not much else to say, so on to the next fatality.
Number 11.
Coming from the guy with the worst fatality from this game, Reptile is back with a fatality that is actually good. Reptile takes off his mask, then uses his tongue to eat the entire head from the opponent's body. While simplistic, it does give off the mystery of who this Reptile character is and the reason why there's a reptilian head on a human body. There's also a funny glitch when doing this fatality. If you perform this fatality in the armory stage in the arcade version, the ground will start to move once the fatality ends. Damn you home console ports ruining the fun of unintentional glitches. If there's one thing I don't like about the fatality is that it's yet another head decapitation fatality, but given how Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 ruined the fatality, I'll take what I can get. By the way, we're out of the B tier fatalities for Mortal Kombat 2. Now it's time to talk about the fatalities I consider A tier. Let's see what the top 10 has to offer.
Number 10.
It's been a while since I last brought up Scorpion, and despite this being the weaker of the 2 fatalities Scorpion has, it's actually really good. Scorpion slices his opponent's throat and then closes it off by slicing the opponent's torso off. Well, sure, it's a pretty good fatality that isn't his trademark fatality, which we'll get to later. If there was one complaint I'd have to give this fatality is how the opponent does the animation where they get stuck in Sub-Zero's ice puddle, which does look a bit tacky. But besides that one flaw, this is an awesome fatality. Okay, let's get back to everybody's favorite form of fatalities.
That being decapitations! Oh yeah! Number 9 and number 8.
Alrighty, time for our next double feature, that being Johnny Cage's head uppercut fatality, and also the same fatality, but this time, he uppercuts 3 heads. Not much can be said since it's a repeat of a fatality from the first Mortal Kombat game. What I can say is that the triple head uppercut fatality is inspired by a glitch from a previous entry where if you're fast enough, you can make Johnny Cage uppercut 2 heads off. If you're curious on which one I like better, I like the one where he uppercuts 3 heads off. 3 is always better than 1. So, congratulations to Johnny Cage for having the best head decapitation fatality in the game. Okay, on to the next fatality.
Number 7.
Baraka's fatality where he gives you a lift is simple when you first look at it, but when looking deeper, you realize how terrifying this fatality is. Imagine your last moment on Earth is being lifted up by Baraka's blade and having to watch as you bleed everywhere looking at the British lad dead in the eye. Now that's terrifying. If there was one flaw with this fatality is the fact that it does have that whole Molina side stab nonsense in that it's not excessively gory. But if you look deeper, it does become a horrifying fate to be in. Alright, let's talk about the other 2 fatalities Shang Tsung has.
Number 6 and number 5.
It's been a while since we've seen Shang Tsung. His inner ear explosion was pretty mid. These 2 on the other hand are not, for we have 2 more fatalities from our pal Shang Tsung. The weaker one of the 2 is where he lifts your body up and steals your soul. Not to say his fatality sucks, no pun intended, quite the opposite actually. They had to make unique sprites for each fire for this one specific fatality. The only exceptions to this are the ninjas obviously since our palette swaps, but that's besides the point. I really like the attention to detail on that despite how hard it is to notice. The most notable ones however are where if you do this fatality on Kung Lao or Raiden, their hat will still remain. I don't know why the hat stays with the body, I just think it's utterly humorous on how that's a thing. As for Shang Tsung's best fatality in the game, it's the one where he turns into Kintaro and punches the top half of the opponent across the stage. How insane is that? The only reason why I think the Kintaro fatality got the edge over the Soul Sucker fatality is because the payoff from performing the Kintaro fatality is more satisfying. You get to see Shang Tsung turn into a character you can't morph into just effortlessly punch the upper half of the opponent's body as it's sent flying across the screen. Feel free to disagree in the comments on why it should be the other way around. I'm not your dad. Anyways, we're done with the A tier fatalities and we're on to the S tier fatalities. Spectacular fatalities that lack any kind of flaws. Let's finish off this ranking and talk about the number 4 spot.
Number 4.
God damn, Scorpion cooked up his 2 fatalities. Literally for this one that we're just currently talking about. Scorpion's fatality from the first game returns and is just as toasty as ever. Rather than just kneeling down after the opponent was burned to a crisp, the opponent catches on fire as they flail their arms helplessly before exploding with multiple bones raining from above. Now that's an improvement. There is also an alternate variation to this fatality requiring additional inputs for said alternative variation, and when that's achieved, you'll hear Dan Forden say, after the opponent explodes. Overall, a classic fatality that is worthy of being in the second game. With how much it was improved from the first game, which was phenomenal, there's 3 more fatalities from this game that I like better than this one.
Number 3.
Liu Kang's first fatality really didn't impress a lot of people back in 1992, so how does he improve from his first fatality? That's easy. He turns it into a dragon and then bites the top half of the opponent's body off. Now that's epic. I think this fatality is worthy of ranking above Ghost Rider fatalities due to the fact that a big ass dragon is way more terrifying than a spooky scary skeleton. The only issue I can think of for this fatality is how it completely forgets the fact that Liu Kang is a pacifist. Oh, don't worry, it will worsen over time. Just you wait. This is what a C tier fatality does to a Shaolin monk.
Number 2. Just being sure, number 1 is Jax's other fatality where he rips his opponent's arms off. While simple, it's another fatality where they made unique sprites for each fighter getting their arms ripped off, hence why it's so high up, and it's also the first fatality in the series to go for the arms. I also can't forget the terrifying reality of having your arms ripped out. Imagine your last moments on Earth where your arms have been ripped off that you slowly bleed to death all because of some guy that shares the same name with a bunny from a popular indie cartoon that felt like ripping your arms off. The only nitpick I have for this fatality is how the opponent doesn't fall down to the ground. Yeah, the fatalities where the top half gets ripped off do have that issue, but they're all lower than this one, so shut up. But unfortunately, these fatalities would foreshadow how the dismembered sprites of the opponent would play out in the next game. But enough worrying about the next Mortal Kombat game, let's take a look at the best fatality in Mortal Kombat 2. Number 1! I'm pretty sure most people can agree that Kung Lao's hat slice fatality is the best and also most gruesome fatality this game has to offer. But I want to be funny, so I'm calling it the half-off fatality. How Kung Lao does this fatality is that he cuts his opponent clean in half vertically. After doing that, the opponent falls down to their knees and their body gets split in half from what Kung Lao did to them. And this fatality is a big deal because there are sprites exclusively made for this one specific fatality, like with Jax's disarmed fatality. But with that all said, I consider Kung Lao's half-off fatality to be the best fatality in Mortal Kombat 2. Well guys, that's gonna do it for this video. It was quite a hefty ranking video, but it was fun ranking something that wasn't Battlefront related. By the way, here's the average score ranking for all the MK2 characters if you're curious. I'll be doing this for each Mortal Kombat game from here on out. Tune in next time for my fatality ranking series where I rank the fatalities from not just Mortal Kombat 3, but the Ultimate Update and the Trilogy 2. My god, it's gonna take forever to lab out which one should qualify as entries for that ranking since it's not as easy as one might think it is. But I'm going to ignore it for the time being and talk about Dungeon Defenders for my next big ranking video. Good night, Earthrealm!